Before we begin, let me place you in the moment. You are on Calyx Concord Station, a neutral city floating in open space, where every handshake has a price. Our story follows Rhea Corin, the security lead for an Earth delegation. Her job is simple to say and hard to survive. Keep the people she protects visible, safe, and moving forward. But on a station built for diplomacy, danger does not always look like danger. Sometimes it looks like ceremony, perfect lighting, and a smile that lasts one beat too long. So listen closely, because in the next few minutes, one small detail will matter more than any weapon, and one decision will change what an entire station is allowed to hear. If you are ready, step inside. Rhea Corin stepped off the docking tram and into Calyx Concord Station, a neutral city in open space where every promise had a price. She was the Earth delegation security lead, which meant she stood between diplomats and the kind of smiles that hid knives. The mission was simple on paper. Escort the delegation to the signing hall, keep them visible, keep them alive, and leave with the agreement intact. Rhea breathed in and caught a sharp cleanliness in the air that felt curated. The welcoming banners looked harmless, yet her gut read them as cover for something she could not see. The delegation moved as a compact cluster through the arrival concourse under soft lighting and polished stone that had never known dust. Rhea kept her eyes off the advertisements and on the people who stood too still near the security gates. She counted exits without turning her head. She listened for the rhythms of a real crowd, and she listened for what did not belong. Alton Vey walked at the center, the Earth envoy in a plain dark suit with no medals, no flair, and no wasted words. Rhea respected that, because it left fewer handles for an enemy to grab. Mina Sato, the chief interpreter, stayed close to Alton with a tablet held against her chest like armor. The rest of the delegation followed, 2 aides, 1 cultural liaison, 1 medical officer, and a station escort who smiled too hard. The escort bowed slightly and spoke with practiced warmth. "Welcome to Calyx Concord Station. We will take you through the ceremonial route." Rhea answered before Alton could. "We take the shortest route." The escort hesitated, and the pause was tiny, but it was real. Then the escort recovered and nodded once. "Of course," the escort said. "The shortest, then?" Rhea watched the escort adjust her wristband as they walked. The gesture looked casual, but it felt like a cue meant for someone else. Near a glass archway ahead, a cluster of station security shifted their stance. They moved as if they had been waiting for a signal, and Rhea felt her shoulders tighten. Rhea leaned closer to Alton without touching him. "Sir, I do not like their timing." Alton did not look at her. He kept walking as if nothing had changed. "Noted," he said quietly. "Get us inside and keep it polite." That was the game here, at least as Rhea understood it. Polite, right up until it was not. They reached the first security gate, where a tall scanner frame stood like a ceremonial doorway. Station guards wore clean uniforms and neutral expressions. The nearest guard raised a hand. "Randomized verification," the guard said. Rhea glanced at the overhead cameras. The lenses tracked the delegation with a smooth confidence that made her feel singled out. "Random," Rhea repeated, keeping her voice calm. She watched the guard's wrist device, not his face. "Proceed." One by one, the delegation stepped through. Alton went first, then Mina, and the others followed in a tight line. Rhea went last, standing half a step behind Mina, so she could see both the gate and the corridor beyond. The scanner hummed, and the sound sat in her teeth. For a second, everything held still. Then the guard's wrist device blinked once. The gate behind them sealed with a soft thud. Rhea felt the air change before she saw why. The crowd noise dimmed, as if someone had lowered a volume dial in her ear. Ahead, the corridor split into 3 paths. Each path was marked with a small sign that looked temporary, like it had been placed for today and today only. The escort smiled again. "For comfort and ceremony, we separate groups briefly. The envoy takes the honor route." Rhea's hand hovered near the compact toolkit at her belt. It was not a weapon, but it was what passed for one when weapons were forbidden. "No," Rhea said. The escort's smile did not break. "It is required." Alton stopped and turned his head just enough to meet Rhea's eyes. He looked steady, and that steadiness was its own kind of pressure. "It is their house," he said. "We stay calm." Ria did not argue in front of cameras. She watched Mina, because Mina was reading the same room in a different language. Mina's face had gone tight, like she was swallowing words. Then she leaned in, barely moving her lips. "This is not standard. They did not send the right codes." "Mina vi spirit." Ria nodded once, and stepped forward, gentle but firm. She placed herself where she could see all 3 corridors while staying close enough to Alton to move with him. "We do not separate without my confirmation," Ria said. A station guard lifted his chin. "Security lead, you are delaying the ceremony." Behind the guard, 2 more security officers appeared from a side door. That door had not been opened a moment ago, and it closed again as soon as they stepped through. Ria counted them. 3 visible, and her mind kept a quiet slot open for the one she could not see. From his corridor alone, Calyx Concord already felt like a maze to her. Too many seams, too many doors, too many places to hide a second line. "Alton," Ria said softly, "if you move, I cannot cover you." Alton looked past her toward the honor corridor. "We are here to sign peace," he said. "Do not be the first one to start a fight." Ria nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because it landed like a blade wrapped in velvet. She had seen too many clean places where violence wore a polite mask. The escort gestured, and the guard stepped closer by a pace. Ria did not raise her hands, but she raised her voice just enough to be caught by cameras. "Station security, confirm your authority by station charter." The nearest guard hesitated. The hesitation was small, and it was everything. In the same moment, a sharp sound echoed from deeper in the corridor ahead. It was a loud pop like a ruptured canister. The lights flickered, and the escort flinched. The guards turned their heads, and Ria used the half-second they gave her. She stepped to Mina, grabbed the interpreter by the upper arm, and pulled her back through the scanner frame. The scanner protested with a warning hum that tried to sound official. Ria had watched the timing on the seal, and she drove her shoulder into the panel before it could engage fully. The gate buckled and slid half open. "Move," Ria said. Mina stumbled through with her. On the other side, the concourse noise was louder, and the air felt less staged. Ria did not stop. She pulled Mina into the stream of travelers, kept her head down, and walked like she belonged there. Behind them, the corridor gate clanged shut. No station alarm sounded, and Ria felt her stomach drop, because silence like that usually meant someone else had control. Mina breathed hard. They separated the envoy. "I saw," Ria said, keeping her eyes forward. Mina's eyes were wide, but her voice stayed steady. "They will accuse you. They will accuse Earth. They will control the story." Ria did not answer out loud. She lifted her wrist to her own device and glanced at the nearest concourse screen as it refreshed. A headline flashed across public displays near the gate. The console displayed a line that read, "Earth Security Lead detained for attempted assault during diplomatic entry." Ria kept walking, and she did not look up long enough to give the cameras an easy angle. She could feel lenses pivoting anyway, following her movement like a lock. The screen refreshed again within moments. The console displayed a line that read, "Suspect Ria Korin is armed and dangerous." "Mina Svalavid." "You are not armed." "They are," Ria said, and she pulled Mina toward the edge of the public flow. She slipped them into a service passage between a closed cafe and a quiet retail booth. The smell of roasted beans and synthetic citrus clung to the air as the crowd noise fell behind them. Ria listened, head slightly tilted. Footsteps came from the concourse entrance, heavy and coordinated. "They will lock the station down," Mina whispered. "They will turn people against you." Ria checked the narrow passage ahead and saw maintenance access signage. Cameras were fewer there, and the walls looked older, built for function instead of ceremony. "They want us to run the way they planned," Ria said. "We do not give them that." Mina stared at her. "What are we doing?" Ria kept her voice low as they crossed the threshold into the maintenance spine, one level below the public decks and behind concourse. "Wall. We go in," she said. "We bring Alton out." The lights were dimmer in the spine, and the metal carried old heat. Ria kept Mina close, and she counted turns in her head as if she were counting breaths. A few minutes passed, and a soft vibration ran through the deck. It felt like a load change under her boots, and Rhea could not tell if it was normal or a containment move. An hour ago, they had been walking a ceremonial route. Now Rhea could feel the hunt shaping itself around her. She stopped at a junction where 3 maintenance routes met. On the wall, someone had scratched a small symbol into the paint. It was a simple looped mark, and it looked fresh. The metal underneath was still bright. Mina lean closer. That is not station signage. Rhea touched the scratch lightly. The mark sat at eye level, placed where a person would notice it only if they were scanning for guidance. Rhea exhaled once slow. Someone inside Calyx Concord wanted her to follow, and she hated that she had no better option. Stay behind me, she told Mina. Mina nodded and tightened her grip on the tablet. Rhea followed the scratched mark deeper into the maintenance spine, moving away from public light and toward whatever lived behind the ceremony. 2 hours later, Rhea checked the time on her wrist device and forced herself not to rush. She and Mina were still in the maintenance spine, farther from the concourse and deeper in the service maze than she wanted to be. They moved through a narrow utility corridor that smelled of hot metal and coolant, the kind of place where the station's real work happened. Rhea could feel sweat gathering under her collar each time they passed a warm conduit run. Mina whispered, "If they catch us, they will say we try to sabotage the treaty." "They already said it," Rhea replied. Mina shook her head as she kept pace behind Rhea. "They will make it believable." Rhea stopped at a service hatch and listened with her ear close to the metal. Voices drifted through the panel, muffled but clear enough to parse. Station security, at least 3, moving in a search pattern. Rhea leaned in close to Mina. "When I open this, follow me and do not speak." Mina nodded. Rhea opened the hatch with a short twist of her toolkit. The panel released with a soft click, and she slid through first, then pulled Mina after her. They dropped into a wide service gallery behind a row of storage lockers. The lighting was low, and the air ran cooler. Above them, a polished floor carried the soft thrum of public footsteps. Rhea kept her mouth shut and let that sound remind her how close the performance was. The next scratch symbol sat on a support beam and pointed left. Rhea followed it until the gallery opened into a larger bay filled with stacked crates. Maintenance drones were parked there like sleeping animals. A single person stood near a workbench with his back turned, wearing a station technician coat. Rhea raised her hand, and Mina froze behind her. The technician did not turn right away. When he did, his face was calm in a way that felt rehearsed. "Rhea Corin," he said quietly. "You are early." Rhea did not lower her hand. "Who are you?" "My name is Corin Lask," the technician said. "I keep the station breathing." Mina whispered, "A station engineer?" Corin nodded once, and his eyes flicked to the corridor behind them. "They are tightening patrols. They will sweep this spine next." Rhea stayed centered, voice flat. "You marked the walls." "I did," Corin said. "Because you're being pushed toward an ending they planned." He paused, and his calm did not hide his urgency. "I prefer different endings." Rhea did not trust him, but she trusted the math of the moment. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. "Where's Alton Vey?" Rhea asked. Corin's face tightened at the name. "In administrative holding," he said. "They call it protective custody." His eyes held on hers. "It is not." Mina stepped forward a fraction. "Why do this?" Corin looked at Mina like he was weighing whether she could carry a truth without breaking. "Because I watched them build this," he said. "And because I'm tired of watching good people disappear." Rhea saw a flicker behind his calm, and she chose to believe the flicker over the polish. Fear was not proof, but it was honest. "Why help us?" Rhea asked. Corin answered without hesitation. "Because the treaty is a stage," he said, "and your envoy is being used as a prop." Mina swallowed. "They want to kill him." Corin looked away, then back. "They want him silenced," he said. "They want his hands empty and his voice gone before the broadcast begins." Rhea felt cold clarity settle in her chest. "Broadcast," she repeated. Corin nodded. "The signing is being streamed across Calyx Concord and beyond," he said. "The Chancellor will speak." Rhea heard the word chancellor and pictured a briefing file with clean photos and cleaner language. She could almost hear her instructors warning her what power looked like when it stayed polite. She will declare a version of events, Corin said. She will say Earth brought violence. He kept talking like a man describing a machine he had watched assemble. She will say the station acted in defense. Then the treaty becomes her shield. Mina's voice shook. Who is the chancellor? Celine Mar, Corin said. She holds the station's public voice. Rhea had heard the name in briefings, and she remembered the tone used when people spoke it. A person like that did not need to lift a weapon to hurt someone. Rhea asked, why is Alton the target? Corin did not answer right away. He stepped to the workbench, picked up a small object, and slid it across the surface toward Rhea. It stopped within her reach. It was a ring, simple metal with a faint etch pattern that looked like script wrapped into itself. Mina leaned in. That is an envoy ring. Corin nodded. Your envoy has one, he said, and that ring is more than ceremony. It can open a fallback public channel if the main channel is compromised. Rhea narrowed her eyes. A back door. A lifeline, Corin corrected. It is meant for emergencies. He looked past them, as if he could already hear boots. Celine Mar cannot allow it. Mina looked at Rhea, fear hardening into anger. They're not afraid of weapons, Mina said. They're afraid of him speaking. Rhea felt the hunt shift shape in her mind. This was not an arrest, and it was not security, not the way she understood those words. Rhea asked Corin, why tell me this now? Because your faces will be on every screen in minutes, Corin said, and because Captain Joran-Pike is hunting you. He did not dress it up, not to stop violence, but to deliver you to a camera. Rhea kept her voice even. Captain Pike, the one leading the search. Corin nodded again. He is the hand, Corin said. Celine is the mind. Rhea stared at the ring and did not pick it up yet. She asked, where's Mina's escort team? Corin's mouth tightened. Detained, he said. Some may already be gone. Mina inhaled sharply, and Rhea lifted a hand to keep her still. Panic would make Mina loud, and loud would make them easy. Rhea said, give me a route to administrative holding. Corin stepped to a wall panel and tapped a sequence, then pointed with his finger instead of flooding her with schematics. 3 levels up, through the freight spine, he said. There's a service lift. It will get you within 20 meters of the holding corridor. After that, you'll be on camera. Rhea asked, what do you want in return? Corin looked tired for the first time. I want the station to survive the truth, he said. And I want someone to remember that I tried. Rhea picked up the ring and closed her hand around it. The metal was cool, and the etching felt faint under her thumb. Mina whispered, are we really going to break into holding? Rhea met her eyes. We are not breaking in, Rhea said. We're taking him back. A soft chime sounded from the corridor behind them. Corin's face tightened. They are near, he said. Rhea nodded, and she did not thank him. Thanks were for when people lived long enough to hear them. They slipped back into the service gallery and headed for the freight spine, staying behind storage racks until the space widened. Rhea kept Mina tucked close to her shoulder, and she kept listening for the first boot fall that did not belong. The freight spine smelled like oil and hot wiring. The scent told Rhea the station was working hard to pretend everything was fine. Rhea kept Mina close and moved with a steady pace, not running and not acting like prey. In places like Calyx Concord, panic was a signal flare. They reached the service lift Corin had described, a narrow platform tucked behind stacked cargo cages. The lift controls were old and physical, and Rhea felt relief at anything that could not be remotely rewritten. Rhea pressed the call pad once and listened for the motor. Mina whispered, if this goes wrong, they will say you attacked the station. They will say. It either way, Rhea replied. The lift arrived with a soft shudder. Rhea stepped on first, scanned ceiling corners, then pulled Mina in behind her so Mina would not be visible from the bay. She kept one hand near the emergency stop, not because she wanted to stop, but because she wanted a choice. The lift rose through a tight shaft, and the walls trembled with distant movement that sounded like boots above and below. Rhea counted seconds in her head and pictured the holding corridor as a simple line. A line was something she could cut across. When a lift opened, the air changed. It smelled cleaner, and the lighting was brighter. Rhea stepped out and pulled Mina into a recessed niche beside a wall panel, still on the service side of the polished corridor. From here, she could peek without stepping into the open. The corridor ahead was wide and mirrored. Rhea read the mirrors as possible camera covers, and she kept her breathing slow. Mina breathed. "We are near." Rhea nodded once. She listened for the soft scrape of boots, not the sound of a crowd. She peeked around the corner and saw the first patrol. 3 station security officers, uniforms clean and weapons held low but ready. Rhea tapped Mina's wrist gently, a silent cue to stay, then slipped back into the niche. She checked the wall panel and found a thin access seam she could pry. Rhea worked her toolkit into it, careful and quiet. A faint click, and the panel loosened. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, barely wide enough for shoulders, running parallel to the corridor. Dust sat in the dark, and it smelled like something that had not been used in months. Mina stared at the opening. "You want us to crawl?" "I want us unseen," Rhea said. Rhea went first, pulled herself in, then reached back for Mina's hand. Mina swallowed, then followed with her tablet pressed to her chest. Inside the crawl space, sound became muffled. Rhea moved slowly, and she kept her breathing calm as the metal pressed against her ribs. She counted junctions by touch and felt small changes in temperature where access points met. A minute later, she found a vent grate that looked down into the corridor. Through the slats, she saw a door marked with a simple emblem that suggested administrative authority. 2 guards stood outside it with squared shoulders and eyes forward. "Protective custody," Corin had said. Rhea shifted closer to the grate and listened. One guard spoke to the other low. "Captain Pike wants her alive." "Alive," the second guard repeated. "For the cameras." Rhea felt something cold settle behind her eyes. They were not hunting a threat, and she could hear it in the casual certainty of the words. She crawled forward until she found the next access seam and eased it open. It led into a small service closet directly behind the holding corridor wall. The closet smelled like cleaning solvent and folded fabric. Rhea eased the closet door open a crack and listened again. The guards outside the main holding door were still there. The corridor was otherwise quiet. Rhea whispered to Mina, "Stay here. If I fail, you run back to Corin." Mina shook her head. "No, if you fail, they will kill him." Rhea did not argue because Mina was right. She pointed to a low cabinet. "Hide if you have to," Rhea said. Mina nodded, jaw tight, and moved into the closet corner. Rhea stepped out into the corridor with a calm posture and a blank face. She walked toward the holding door at a measured pace, not fast and not slow. The guards noticed her immediately. One lifted his weapon. "Rhea Corin," the guard said. "On your knees." Rhea raised her hands, palms empty. Her toolkit stayed, clipped at her belt. "I want to speak to the envoy," she said. "You are under arrest," the second guard replied. Rhea kept her voice flat. "You have no charter authority. This is a diplomatic seizure." The first guard laughed once, sharp. "That will sound great on the stream." Rhea moved one hand slightly, as if adjusting her sleeve. She pressed a small adhesive strip onto the wall panel beside her, close enough to feel vibration through the surface. The guards took a step closer. Rhea watched their boots and waited for the half-second where they thought they had already won. Rhea dropped her left hand and snapped her right hand forward. She hooked the strap on the first guard's weapon and yanked it sideways while stepping tight into his space. She drove him into the wall with controlled force, pinning him with her shoulder and hip. Rhea kept herself slightly to his right, so his torso sat between her and the second guard. The second guard raised his weapon, then hesitated when his partner filled the line. Rhea felt the pause and used it. "Stop!" the second guard barked. Rhea did not stop. She slammed her elbow into the door panel where the latch met the frame, jolting it. The adhesive patch vibrated, and the timing fed into her fingers through the wall. Inside, she heard movement, a chair scraping, then a human breath. "Alton," she said, loud enough for him to hear. "Move away from the door." A second later, she hit the latch again with the base of her palm. This time, the latch released and the door swung inward. Alton Vey was inside, hands loose at his sides and eyes sharp. Two officers stood behind him, not guards but officials in neutral gray with no visible weapons. Alton took one look at Rhea. "You should not be here," he said. Rhea stepped into the room and kept the first guard pinned in the doorway, just enough to block the second guard's line. She glanced at the officials. "Who are you?" she demanded. One official lifted a hand in a calming gesture. "We are ensuring safety." Rhea did not smile. "Safety does not require locking doors," she said. Alton's gaze flicked toward the closet area, then back to Rhea. "Mina?" he asked. Rhea kept her body between Alton and the doorway. "Close," she said. "We are leaving." One official took a small step forward, voice smooth. "Envoy Vey cannot leave. He is under protective custody for his own security." Alton spoke softly, as if he were speaking to an audience he could not see. "I did not request custody," he said. The official spread his hands. "It is station protocol." Rhea heard a new sound in the corridor, heavier boots, and more of them. She felt the pressure building outside the door, and she knew this room would not stay quiet. Alton stepped closer to Rhea, voice dropping. "They're afraid of what I know," he said. "They want the signing to be a burial." Rhea asked, "What do you know?" Alton looked past her shoulder toward the door. "I know who traded lives for a seat," he said. "I know which names were paid in bodies." Rhea felt Mina's earlier warning land with weight. This was not a treaty to them, not in the way Earth meant it. The official's wrist device buzzed. His eyes shifted. Then he straightened like someone had just been reminded who owned him. "Captain Pike is approaching," he said. Rhea's jaw tightened. "Then step aside." The official did not move. He spoke as if reading a line meant for cameras. "Rhea Corin, you are ordered to surrender. Your presence constitutes an attack on station governance." Rhea looked at Alton. Alton held her gaze, and Rhea saw quiet readiness in him, not panic. Rhea said, "Do you have your ring?" Alton's expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened. "It is on me," he said. "They have not taken it because they want to use it." Rhea heard boots stop outside the door. A voice rose above them, steady and confident. "Open the door," the voice said. "Now." Captain Joran Pike. Rhea stepped to the doorway and looked out. Pike stood in the corridor with 6 officers behind him, weapons ready and posture perfect. He wore the same clean uniform as the guards, but his eyes looked hungry in a way she did not like. Pike smiled as if the smile belonged to a headline. "Rhea Corin," he said, "you look exactly like the headline." Rhea answered, "You are holding a diplomat without authority." Pike tilted his head. "Authority is whoever writes the broadcast." Rhea felt the trap tighten, and she could see it in the way Pike held himself. He was not here to de-escalate. He was here to present. Pike lifted his wrist device and spoke calm and loud, like he was already being recorded. "Envoy Vey remains safe. The suspect is contained. There will be no disruption." Alton stepped forward into view. "I am not safe," he said. "I am imprisoned." Pike's smile did not move. His eyes flicked to Alton's hand, and Rhea saw him notice the ring like a threat he could not name out loud. "Envoy," Pike said, "please, do not complicate your own protection." A new voice came through the corridor speakers, smooth and measured. It filled the space with the ease of someone used to being obeyed. "Captain Pike," the voice said, "bring them to the staging suite." Rhea recognized the weight in the tone, even without matching it to a face. Pike touched his earpiece. "Yes, Chancellor." Mina suddenly appeared at the edge of the room, having slipped from the closet. Her eyes were wide but focused, and Rhea forced herself not to react. The corridor speakers continued. "Rhea Corin," the voice said, "you have placed yourself in a regrettable position. I will offer you a lawful exit." Rhea stepped forward and spoke into the corridor, voice calm. "Identify yourself." The voice answered without hesitation. "Chancellor Celine Mar," it said, "coordinator of Calyx Concord Station Governance and Broadcast." Mina whispered, "She is the one." Celine's voice stayed warm. "You may surrender the envoy and the interpreter," Celine said. "In return, your charges will be withdrawn. Earth will be spared humiliation. Your people may leave in peace." Rhea felt Alton stiffen beside her. The offer sounded like mercy, and it felt like a knife wrapped in ribbon. Alton spoke, quiet. She wants a ring, he said. Rhea looked at Pike. Pike watched them like a man waiting for the net to finish tightening. Rhea asked, "If we refuse?" Celine answered smoothly, "If you refuse, the station will enter containment. All departures will be frozen. Your delegation will be held for investigation, and the broadcast will proceed with what we can confirm." Mina's breath caught. Rhea did not let her fear show. "The version you can confirm," Rhea said. "The version you control." Celine's voice softened, almost kind. "Control is what keeps people safe," Celine said. Rhea looked at Alton again. She needed a move that did not hand Celine what she wanted, and she needed it fast. Rhea reached for Alton's hand and closed her fingers around the ring, not to take it, but to feel it. The etched pattern pressed against her glove, like a reminder that objects could be weapons without looking like weapons. "Alton," she said low, "can that ring open a public channel?" Alton nodded once. "A fallback channel, yes," he said. "If we reach a broadcast node." Celine's voice sharpened by a fraction. "Rhea Corin, do not escalate." Rhea answered, "You already did." Pike raised his hand, and his officers shifted forward. Rhea moved first. She grabbed Mina by the wrist and pulled her back into the room, away from the doorway. Then she turned to Alton. "Now," she said. Alton stepped back. Rhea slammed the holding door shut and engaged the internal latch. She wedged a metal bar from the room's furniture into the latch seam. It would not hold forever, but it would hold long enough. Outside, Pike's voice rose. "Break it," he ordered. The door shook as officers hit it. Rhea looked around the room and found no clean exit, only a windowless box built for containment. Mina's voice trembled. "We are trapped." Rhea scanned the ceiling corners and caught the edge of a service panel behind a wall console, half concealed by a decorative strip. She pried it open and found a narrow maintenance tunnel, not meant for people, but big enough for desperate ones. Rhea nodded toward it. "Go," she said. Mina hesitated and looked at Alton. Alton stepped forward, calm despite the pounding on the door. "I will follow," he said. Rhea pushed Mina first, then Alton, then climbed in after them. She pulled the panel closed behind her as the holding door finally gave way with a loud crack. Pike's voice came through muffled by metal. "Find them. Now." The tunnel dropped into a service ladder. Rhea climbed down first, then helped Mina, then guided Alton down after her. They landed in a small utility chamber below the holding level. The air was warmer and thicker, and pipes hissed softly in the walls. For a moment, they had space. Then the chamber speakers clicked on, and Celine Mar's voice filled the room, as if she were standing a breath away. "Envoy Vay," Celine said. "I truly wanted to end this gently." Alton looked up, jaw tight. "You may still choose peace," Celine continued. "Give me the ring, and I will release your interpreter." Mina went pale, and Rhea felt her muscles lock. Mina was now a lever, and Celine was pulling without shame. Before Rhea could respond, a side hatch opened with a hiss. 3 officers stepped in, moving quieter than Pike's line troops, and watching the room with cold patience. Rhea read them as a second layer, the kind meant to catch people who slipped the first net. They had found the tunnel, and she felt the failure land heavy and real. She stepped forward, hands raised just enough to look compliant. "You want the ring," she said. "Then come take it." The closest officer smiled slightly and lifted a restraint band. "We will," he said. Rhea watched his hands and waited for the moment his attention narrowed. She moved fast and controlled, knocking the restraint band aside and driving him into the wall with a shoulder strike. She spun and shoved the second officer back in a hatch frame, then grabbed Mina and pulled her behind a bulkhead. Alton stayed close, his hand covering the ring by instinct. The third officer raised a weapon. Rhea saw the muzzle and knew she could not let him fire. She yanked a loose cable from the wall and snapped it across the floor. Sparks jumped bright and harsh, and the officer flinched just long enough. Rhea grabbed Alton and Mina and shoved them toward the far door. "Move," she said. They ran into a narrow service corridor. Behind them, the officers recovered and followed, and Rhea could hear their boots gaining. Celine's voice came once more through speakers along the corridor, softer again. "You cannot win a broadcast with claws," Celine said. "You need permission." Rhea did not answer out loud. She answered with movement, because her only certainty was that stopping would get Mina killed and Alton silenced. 3 hours later, Rhea checked the time on her wrist device again and tasted stale air in her mouth. She was still in the service grid below the residential blocks, where the corridors twisted and narrowed until direction became a memory. The station felt sealed to her, not because she had a memo, but because every vent breath sounded recycled and tight. Rhea kept her pace steady so Mina would not panic in a noise. They reached a junction where 2 service routes split. One angled up toward a utility lift, and the other angled down into a wider tunnel marked with hazard stripes. Rhea stopped and listened. Above, she heard boots that sounded coordinated, sweeping like a net. Below, she heard almost nothing, and the emptiness made her skin prickle. Mina whispered, "Which way?" Rhea answered, "Down." Alton asked softly, "Why down?" "Because the obvious path will be watched," Rhea replied. They took the lower tunnel. The walls were older here, patched with different metals like the station had grown in layers over decades. The lighting flickered in a slow rhythm that felt like a warning. A minute later, Rhea saw another scratched looped symbol on a support beam. Corin's language. Rhea exhaled once. Either Corin was still moving, or someone else was using his marks, and she could not decide which possibility felt better. They followed the marks until the tunnel opened into a small maintenance alcove. A wall console sat beside a sealed hatch, and the hum behind it carried more power than the corridors around them. Rhea approached the console and placed her palm on it, feeling for vibration and listening for movement outside. The screen lit under her hand. The console displayed a line that read, "Restricted. Broadcast infrastructure access. Mina Svalovit." "We are near the broadcast systems." Rhea looked at Alton's ring. Alton nodded once. "We need a node," he said. "A real node, not a public screen. Something tied to the station voice." Rhea examined the sealed hatch and found a physical latch. A small sensor plate sat beside it, and she tested it lightly. The hatch did not move. Then a soft knock came from the other side. 3 taps, then 2, then 1. Rhea froze. Mina's eyes widened. "Someone is there," Mina whispered. Rhea moved closer. "Careful. Identify yourself." A voice came through the hatch, low and urgent. "Corin Lask," the voice said. "Open, before they triangulate me." Rhea did not open immediately. She listened for footsteps, then pressed her ear to the seam and heard only Corin's breathing. She opened the latch and pulled the hatch inward. Corin slipped inside, face pale with a smear of grease on his cheek, then shut the hatch and pressed his back to it. He breathed hard. "They swept my section," Corin said. "I had minutes." Rhea asked, "Why are you here?" Corin looked at Mina, then at Alton. "Because Celine Mar changed the rules," he said. "She sealed the station in containment. No one leaves, not until her broadcast ends." Alton's jaw tightened. "She will bury us alive." Corin nodded. "And she has another lever." Mina's voice shook. "What lever?" Corin hesitated, then forced the words out. "She has an order to detain the interpreter as an accessory," Corin said. "That means you, Mina. If she cannot silence the envoy, she will silence the witness." Mina swallowed hard. Rhea felt anger flare, then flatten into focus because anger without a plan was noise. Rhea asked Corin, "We need a broadcast node. Can you get us in?" Corin moved to the console and typed a short sequence, fast and hard. He did not explain, and Rhea did not ask for explanations she could not afford. The console displayed a line that read, "Maintenance override accepted." A soft vibration ran through the hatch mechanism behind him. Corin pointed to the opening. "This leads to the relay spine that feeds the staging suite," he said. "Not the main studio, but close enough to hop." Rhea asked, "What is the staging suite?" Corin's eyes flicked up, then away. "It is where they will display you," he said. "Where Pike will parade you as the threat." Mina's face tightened. "They want to show my face." Corin nodded. "They want the public to fear Earth," he said. "Fear sells order." Rhea looked at Alton. "We end that." Alton's voice stayed calm, and Rhea heard steel under it. "We end it," he agreed. Corin opened the hatch. A narrow access route lay beyond, bundled cables and insulated pipes, and the hum of power grew louder. Rhea gestured. Stay close. No talking unless needed. They moved into the relay spine in single file, because the space forced it. Rhea went first, Korn behind her, then Mina, then Alton. Rhea kept her hand near the wall and felt small vibrations through the metal. After a few minutes, Korn raised his hand and Rhea stopped. Ahead, through a grating, they could see a wider corridor with clean floors and bright lighting. It felt like the edge of the staging level, close to where the staging suite would sit. Two officers stood at a checkpoint, quiet and still. Rhea did not like how still they were. Korn whispered. They placed them to catch people coming through the relay spine. Rhea whispered back. Then we do not go through the checkpoint. Korn pointed to a side duct, narrower and darker. That duct runs behind the suite wall, he said. It drops into a utility closet inside the staging level. Mina started. Inside the staging suite area? Rhea nodded. That is where the ring can matter. Alton's eyes stayed steady. And that is where Celine Mar expects us. Rhea accepted the risk. Staying invisible forever would only end with Mina in cuffs and Alton in silence. Rhea opened the side duct and crawled in first. Mina followed, then Alton and Korn went last, pulling the cover back into place behind them. The duct smelled of dust and old heat. The metal was warm under Rhea's palms, and she kept moving until they reached a grate that looked down into a utility closet. Shelves, folded fabric, cleaning supplies, and no one inside. Rhea eased the grate open and dropped down silently, then helped Mina, then Alton, then Korn. Korn kept his voice low. 2 doors, he said. One goes to the staging corridor. One goes to the broadcast spine. Rhea checked both. The first door had a small window, and she saw a bright corridor beyond with a guarded staging suite entrance at the far edge. The second door had no window. It had a lock panel and an access seam, and Rhea chose it. She worked her toolkit into the seam, not forcing and not rushing. The latch shifted, and the door opened into a narrow corridor filled with cable bundles and black relay boxes. The hum grew louder. Rhea knew they were near the station voice because the air itself felt tense with power. Mina whispered, "If we speak here, will it record?" Korn nodded. "Everything here listens." Rhea nodded back. "Then we keep our mouths shut." They moved along the broadcast spine and reached a junction where a heavy door stood with a sensor plate and manual latch. A small plaque named the room in neutral words. Broadcast Control Annex. Rhea placed her palm on the sensor plate. It stayed dark. Alton stepped forward and held up his hand. The ring caught the light as he pressed the etched band against the sensor plate. For a second, nothing happened. Then the sensor plate warmed under his touch, and the door latch clicked. Mina exhaled a soft sound of relief. Rhea did not let herself share it yet. They slipped inside. The annex was small, a control room with a console wall and a viewing screen that showed the staging suite feed. The suite looked like a clean courtroom, designed to make a person look guilty just by standing there. On the screen, Captain Pike stood at the center, posture perfect, with a camera drone hovering above him. Behind him, station banners hung like flags. Rhea watched Pike's hands and saw rehearsal in the timing of his breathing. Korn moved to a side panel and began tapping controls. His hands shook slightly, and Rhea kept her eyes on the door. Mina stepped closer to Rhea and whispered, "We can broadcast from here." Korn answered quietly, "Not fully, but we can hop to the fallback channel if the ring authorizes it." Alton stepped to the console and placed his hand near the ring sensor slot. "If this works, Celine Mar loses control of what people hear," he said. Rhea heard a soft click behind them. The annex door had not opened, but the latch shifted like someone outside had tested it. Korn froze. Mina's breath caught. Alton stayed still, hand on the console. Rhea moved to the door and listened. Footsteps stood close, controlled and patient. A voice, low, came through the corridor speaker system, amplified and warm. "She's in there," someone said. Then Captain Pike's voice slid in, smiling. "Rhea Korn," Pike said. "Come out. The cameras are ready." Rhea looked at Alton. "Can you open the channel now?" Alton nodded once. "If I speak the authorization line, yes." Mina whispered, "Do it." Korn whispered, "If you do it, they will breach the door. Rhea replied, calm. Then we finish before they do. She turned back to Alton. Say it, Rhea said. Alton inhaled once, then spoke into the console microphone. I am Envoy QuantumVoyagerStories, he said. I authorize fallback public broadcast for Calyx Concord Station. The console displayed a line that read fallback channel opening. A soft tone sounded. The viewing screen flickered, and a second feed appeared with a public overlay waiting for live audio and image. Outside the door, pressure built. The latch clicked again, and the door began to tremble. Pike's voice came again, still smiling. This is your last chance, Pike said. Do not make this ugly. Rhea leaned toward the console microphone, but did not speak yet. She looked at Mina, then at Alton. Once we start, we do not stop, Rhea said. Mina nodded hard. Alton's jaw tightened. We start, Alton said. Rhea reached for the microphone as the door buckled. Metal groaned under steady pressure, and she stepped between the door and the others. Captain Pike spoke through the corridor speakers as if he were addressing a crowd. Rhea Corrin, you are trespassing in restricted infrastructure. Step away from the console and surrender peacefully. Rhea watched the latch seam for the moment it failed. She turned her head slightly toward Corrin. Can you lock it again? She asked. Corrin swallowed and shook his head. They have the override. I can slow it, not stop it. Mina clutched her tablet. They will take us before we can speak. Alton stayed at the console, face steady. We only need a minute, he said. Rhea nodded once. Then we buy a minute, she replied. She moved to a wall cabinet and yanked it open. Inside were maintenance items, a coil of cable, a heavy clamp, and a thick insulated sheet used to cover live equipment. Rhea grabbed the clamp and the cable and turned back to the door as the latch buckled with a sharp snap. A thin gap opened and light spilled through. Rhea looped the cable around the clamp, anchored it to a floor ring near the console base, then braced the clamp against the door seam. The setup was crude, but it created a stubborn resistance point. The door trembled as Pike's team pushed again. The clamp squealed, the cable tightened, and the gap held. Rhea exhaled slowly and looked at Alton. Now, she said. Alton leaned toward the microphone and spoke with calm that carried farther than shouting. People of Calyx Concord Station, he said. This is Envoy QuantumVoyagerStories. The console displayed a line that read fallback channel live. On the viewing screen, the staging suite feed flickered and a public overlay appeared with a live indicator. Then Alton's face filled the frame from the annex camera. Rhea felt the room change through her skin, like pressure equalizing. It was not physics, it was a tension, and she could hear it in the sudden urgency outside the door. Captain Pike's voice snapped through the corridor speakers. Cut that feed, Corrin muttered, hands moving fast across the side panel. He cannot cut it from here. Not without Celine. Mina leaned close to Alton. Say the core, not the details, she said. Alton nodded. Earth came to sign a treaty, he said. My security lead is being framed. My interpreter is being targeted. I was detained without request, he continued. This is not protection. This is control. Outside, the door slammed again, harder. The clamp shifted, and the cables sang under strain. Rhea planted her boots and adjusted her stance, keeping her body between the door and the console. She trusted Alton to speak, and she kept her own focus on keeping the room alive. Captain Pike's voice returned, sharper. Rhea, you are making this worse. The public will see you as a terrorist. Rhea did not answer into the microphone. She spoke to Alton low. Make them show their hands, she said. Alton understood. He angled his face toward the camera so his words would land clean. Chancellor Celine Mar offered me a deal, he said. Give her my ring, and she would release my interpreter. Mina flinched, then steadied herself. Alton kept going. She threatened station containment if I refused, he said. She is forcing a story before the signing broadcast. The corridor speakers clicked, and Celine Mar's voice slid into the room through the live feed, warm as ever. Envoy Vay, Celine said, you are under stress. Do not confuse procedure with malice. Alton looked straight at the camera. I am not confused, he said. I am detained. My security lead is hunted. Your captain is preparing a staged arrest, he continued. Celine's voice stayed smooth. Captain Pike is protecting the station. The fallback channel is not authorized for political statements. Alton answered, quiet and firm. It is authorized for emergencies. This is an emergency. Rhea heard Celine enter the exchange and felt a grim certainty. Celine could not resist stepping onto the line once the station started listening. Rhea leaned toward Corin. Can you route the staging suite audio into this feed? She asked. Corin's eyes widened. I can try, he whispered. If I pull a mirror from a suite corridor node. Do it, Rhea said. Corin moved fast, fingers shaking. The console displayed a line that read secondary audio source linked. On the viewing screen, Captain Pike's voice suddenly came through the live public feed, faint at first, then clearer as Corin adjusted it. Pike did not realize immediately. He was still performing for his own cameras outside the door. Hold pressure, Pike said to his team. Do not damage the console. We need it clean when the Chancellor arrives. Mina whispered. They are hearing him. Celine's voice sharpened by a fraction. Captain Pike, report, she said. Pike hesitated, then forced smoothness back into his voice. Chancellor, the suspect is barricaded. We are resolving it. Alton spoke into the microphone, careful. People of Calyx Concord, he said. You just heard your captain discuss keeping the scene clean for an arrival. Celine jumped in too fast. That is normal containment protocol, she said. Alton did not argue. He asked one clean question, and like a blade. Why do you need the scene clean for cameras? He asked. If this is safety, why is your first priority a display? There was a pause, not long, but long enough. Rhea heard the door shift again and felt the clamp begin to slide. Seconds were chewing through their minute. Rhea grabbed the insulated sheet from the cabinet and tossed it over the console side panel, covering Corin's hands and the wiring. It would not stop a breach, but it would slow a sudden grab. Then she rolled the thick cable coil toward the door gap and wedged it low. The door would open, but it would stumble, and stumble could save a life. Alton kept speaking, voice controlled. I came here to sign peace, he said. But peace cannot be signed under a knife. Celine returned, colder now. Envoy Vey, you are jeopardizing public order. If you care about lives, you will comply. Alton answered, and his words carried personal weight. I care about lives, he said. That is why I will not trade Mina Sato's freedom for my silence. Mina's eyes filled, but she did not speak. She stood taller, a witness refusing to collapse. Captain Pike's voice cut in, aggressive, now bleeding into the live feed. Enough, Pike said. Breach. The door finally gave. The clamp snapped loose with a loud crack. The cable whipped and slapped the floor, and the door swung inward until the coil wedge caught it halfway. The first officer had to squeeze through sideways. Rhea shoved the door hard into his shoulder, pinning him the gap with weight and leverage instead of strike. She stepped back before hands could grab her. A second officer pushed through, and Rhea sidestepped and drove him into the wall with a controlled shoulder check that turned his body and broke his line. Captain Pike appeared behind them, weapon held low. His eyes flicked to the console indicator, and Rhea saw him understand they had already stolen the moment. You are alive, he said. Rhea met his gaze. Not your show, she said. Pike raised his voice toward his team, trying to keep command in his tone. Chancellor, authorized force. Celine's voice came through the feed, clipped. Do not kill them, she said. Bring the envoy and the interpreter intact. Bring the ring. Rhea felt the air in her lungs go cold. Celine had said it where the whole station could hear. Alton spoke into the microphone, quiet and devastating. People of Calyx Concord, he said. You just heard your chancellor order the seizure of a diplomatic ring on a live channel. Celine cut in, too late. Envoy Vey is manipulating context, she said. Mina stepped forward and took the microphone, voice small but clear. My name is Mina Sato, she said. I'm a chief interpreter for Earth. Chancellor Mar told Envoy Vey she would release me if he gave her the ring. Mina continued. I'm not a criminal. I was invited here. They're using me as leverage, Mina said. Pike lunged toward the console. Rhea moved between him and the panel, raising her hands and stepping into his space so he had to stop or collide. Move, Pike snarled low. Rhea answered calm. If you touch that console, everyone will see, she said. Pike's jaw flexed. He looked past her, saw the camera, saw the live marker, and saw the audience he could no longer control. Rhea used that weakness. Your chancellor told you not to kill us, Rhea said. So what are you going to do, Captain? Pike's eyes flicked, calculation visible on his face. He could not shoot, and he could not beat her clean, so he chose the only move left. Contain them, Pike said. Take the envoy. Two officers stepped forward with restraint bands. Rhea shifted to the side, guided Mina behind the console, and kept Pike's line of sight blocked. She kicked a small maintenance stool into one officer's path. The officer stumbled, recovered, and cursed, and Rhea used the moment. Rhea shoved the annex door wider and opened a line to the corridor beyond. She glanced at Corin. Exit route, she asked. Corin pointed fast. Left corridor, then down the relay ladder, he said. It drops into the utility closet. I can seal behind us. Rhea nodded and looked at Alton. You stay on a microphone until we move, she said. Then we move as one. Alton nodded once and spoke loud enough for the feed. Captain Pike is attempting to seize me on a live channel, he said. Chancellor Marr is ordering it. Celine's voice snapped, losing warmth. Stop this, she said. Alton did not stop. If I disappear, you will know why, he said. Rhea moved. She grabbed Mina's wrist and pulled her toward the open door. Corin went first because he knew the turns. Alton followed, one hand near the ring, and Rhea went last, backing out with her eyes on Pike. Pike stepped forward to grab Alton. Rhea slammed her shoulder into Pike's forearm, knocking his reach offline. Pike stumbled half a step, and that half step was the difference between capture and escape. They moved into the corridor with purpose, not a wild sprint. Corin led them to the relay ladder hatch, and Rhea heard the annex door behind them slam as officers crowded the threshold. They dropped down the relay ladder, metal rungs cold under their hands. Rhea guided Mina down, then Alton, then watched Corin drop after them before she followed. They landed in the utility closet they had used before, then slipped into the duct path that fed back toward the service side. Corin sealed the panel behind them with a quick twist and a hidden latch. It would not hold forever. It would slow. Mina breathed hard. Are we still live? Alton pressed the ring against a small sensor patch on the wall and focused. The fallback channel will stay open until she cuts power, he said. If she cuts power, the whole station will notice. Corin whispered, she cannot cut it clean. Too many systems share the bus. Rhea led them through the maintenance duct toward the freight spine, keeping turns tight and movement quiet. She used the feel of airflow changes to count junctions because the ducts did not forgive mistakes. Then the corridor speakers went quiet for a second. When they returned, the voice was not Celine and not Pike. A calm, unfamiliar station voice spoke, clipped and official. Station governance emergency session is now active. Chancellor Celine Marr is temporarily suspended pending review. Mina froze mid-step. Alton stopped for half a breath, and Rhea forced them forward. Keep going, she said. Suspended is not arrested. They reached the freight spine lift and rode it down. Rhea watched indicator lights and listened for footsteps above, hearing none close enough to matter yet. When the lift opened into the lower service bay, the smell of oil and heat hit again. Compared to polished corridors, this space felt honest. Corin led them to a side passage that opened near a cargo cage line. Beyond it, a docking route marker glowed faintly and pointed toward the arrival concourse. Mina whispered, if governance suspended her, why are we still hunted? Rhea answered without looking at Mina, because Pike is still a man with orders and pride. She said, men like that do not stop until someone makes them. They moved through the service passage and reached a viewing slit into the concourse. The public space looked changed, people gathered in clusters, watching screens and talking fast. Station security stood uncertainly, no longer moving like a single machine. Rhea spotted an officer at a kiosk with a weapon held but not raised, and confusion sat on his face like a crack in a wall. Alton leaned closer to the slit. They heard it, he murmured. Mina whispered, they believed it? Alton shook his head slightly. They heard a thing they were not supposed to hear, he said. That is how belief starts. Rhea scanned the concourse for their escape route. The docking tram line ran toward the Earth berth, and open did not mean safe. Corin touched Rhea's elbow. There is a service exit that drops you behind the tram gate, he said. You can reach your berth without crossing the main floor. Rhea nodded. Lead, she said. Corin opened a hatch and guided them through a back corridor that ran behind the tram gate area. Rhea kept them in single file at the tightest turns, with Mina between her and Alton so she could protect both. Corin stopped at a final door that led to the service side of the tram gate area. Rhea listened and heard footsteps approaching from the other side, heavier and more decisive than the uncertain guards in the concourse. Captain Pike. Rhea felt a grim calm settle in her chest. Of course, he would try to catch them at the last clean choke point. The door handle turned. The door opened. Pike stepped in with two officers, and Rhea noted the way his uniform was still clean while his eyes were no longer polished. He looked like a man whose script had burned in his hands. He saw them and smiled without warmth. Envoy, Pike said, you will come with me. Alton spoke quiet. You no longer have authority. Pike's gaze flicked to Rhea. Authority is a lagging indicator, he said. I'm still armed and you're still trapped. Rhea stepped forward, hands empty, voice flat. You cannot take him now, she said. If you do, you prove everything, he said. Pike's jaw tightened. I do not care what they think, he said. Mina whispered, barely audible. He will do it. Rhea looked at Pike's two officers. Their eyes shifted, and Rhea could tell they had heard the broadcast because they were not moving like men who believed they were protected. Rhea spoke to the officers, not to Pike. You are station security, she said. You protect the station. If you drag a diplomat away after a live accusation, you become a weapon for a suspended chancellor, Rhea continued. One officer swallowed. The other looked at Pike, then looked away. Pike hissed low. Do not hesitate. Rhea held her gaze steady. This ends now, she said. Pike raised his weapon slightly, not aiming, but threatening. In that instant, Alton stepped forward, lifted his hand, and made the ring visible. He spoke to the air, not to Pike. Fallback channel is still live, he said. Captain Pike is pointing a weapon at me. Pike froze. He looked around as if he could see invisible cameras, and Rhea knew he could because the station had eyes and ears. Now the station was listening without Celine. One of Pike's officers lowered his own weapon completely. Captain, the officer said, stand down. Pike stared at him, disbelief turning into rage. You are disobeying me? Pike snapped. The officer did not flinch. I'm obeying the station, he said. The second officer nodded, then stepped between Pike and Alton. It was a subtle move, and it changed everything. Pike's hand trembled. For a second, Rhea thought he might choose violence anyway. Rhea stepped closer, voice low and cold. If you move, you will be remembered as the proof, she said. Not the hero. Pike's eyes met hers, and she saw him register something he did not like. Not fear and not anger, but certainty. Slowly, Pike lowered his weapon. His voice was bitter. This station will tear itself apart, he said, and you will call it justice. Rhea answered calm. That is not my problem, she said. That is the price of your lies. Pike turned and walked out without another word. His officers did not follow him, and they stayed where they were, watching and uncertain. One of them looked at Alton. Envoy Vey, he said, you are free to depart. Station governance will request statements. Alton nodded once. You will get them, he said, after my people are safe. The officer stepped aside. Corin opened the tram gate access from the service side. The route behind it led straight to the Earth berth corridor without forcing them back through the main concourse. Rhea led the group through at a steady pace. Mina breathed like someone who had been underwater and finally reached air. They reached the berth. The Earth shuttle waited with lights ready and a crew that looked tense and alert. Rhea stepped onto the ramp first and scanned corners. Then she gestured for Mina and Alton aboard. Corin stopped at the base of the ramp and did not move. Mina turned back. Corin, she said, voice small. Come with us. Corin shook his head. I cannot, he said. This is my station. Rhea looked at him. You helped us, she said. They will know. Corin nodded. I know, he replied. But if everyone who sees rot leaves, the rot wins. Ria held his gaze for a second, then gave a single nod. It was not gratitude, it was recognition. Alton stepped forward and spoke softly. Your name will be recorded, he said. Not as a traitor, as a witness. Corin exhaled and stepped back into the corridor shadows. The shuttle hatch closed. The engines rose in pitch, and the craft lifted from the berth with a smooth push. Calyx Concord Station fell away behind them, a glittering city. To Ria, it looked unchanged from the outside, and that made her jaw tighten. On the flight deck, Mina sat strapped in with hands shaking. Alton stared at the forward display, eyes focused. Ria remained standing until the pilot called safe altitude. Only then did she sit, letting her shoulders ease by a fraction. Mina turned toward Ria. Why did you do it? She asked. You could have escaped alone. Ria looked at her, expression unreadable. Because they were going to erase you, she said. And I do not like erasures. Alton spoke softly without looking away from the display. This treaty is dead, he said. Ria answered good. The shuttle cleared the station perimeter. The traffic control channel crackled with new voices, confused and layered and arguing, and Ria listened without trusting any of it yet. Ria closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Comfort was expensive, and she had learned what it cost. Her wrist device vibrated once, not a station broadcast, and not an official channel. It was a narrow band ping that came from nowhere. Visible. The console displayed a line that read, Message received. No sender. Ria tapped it open. The console displayed a line that read, You broke a broadcast. Now break a prison. Coordinates attached. Mina leaned closer, voice tense. Who is that? Ria did not answer right away. She stared at the message, then at the dark ahead beyond the forward display. Alton's voice was quiet. That is not Celine, he said. This is something else. Ria nodded once. Yes, she said. She closed the message without replying. Calyx Concord was behind them now, and Ria refused to let the memory of it hook into her throat. Ria did not celebrate. She sat in the dim cabin light, listened to the shuttle's steady hum, and let the weight of what had happened settle where it belonged. She could already imagine the next weeks of polished statements and careful denials. Ria did not need to guess, because she had heard how fear tried to stay confident. To Ria, fear sounded like a door giving way. It sounded like a smooth voice tightening when people stopped obeying. And it sounded like one line on a screen that should never have existed. A message with no sender, pointing at a prison with no name. Ria looked forward, eyes cold and jaw set. She said nothing, because some decisions were too sharp to speak until the moment came. In her mind, she could almost hear how Command would want this story package for strangers. They would ask for a neat ending, a clean moral, and a line that made people lean closer. Ria did not have a clean moral. She only had a new set of coordinates and a rule she could live with. When a message has no sender, you assume it is a trap, and you prepare anyway.